the chance of you getting stung and being badly injured is really, really high. I've seen guys who are starting out, there's a hive in the wall where they remove the whole wall. That's ridiculous. So the damage that can be done by somebody who doesn't,
Okay, so something that came up this week was a client that asked a question. Said, why don't we just doom the hive? They've got some bees in the air brick underneath their bath. Why can't we just doom them and get our gardener to scrape all the comb and stuff out? And
Okay, number one, do you value your life? Dooming bees or poisoning bees is very risky. Obviously, the bees are going to try and defend themselves, so the chance of you getting stung and being badly injured is really, really high. And second of all, what we've noticed when we do go to areas where there's been removals requested where they've doomed the bees, what invariably happens is, remember the hive is built in like an onion in various layers, and right in the center of that is their brood. It's the nurse bees and the brood. And so when you spray with doom, invariably you end up killing the outside of the colony, and the ones in the middle stay behind. They're in a little cocoon.
Like a fumigation.
Similar sort of thing. So they protected on the inner circle effectively of the hive. And so what happens is that the bees on the outside die, and when the bees on the inside that haven't been killed hatch out, they've got a massive colony that they now have to defend, or a massive area. And so those bees become hyper aggressive, and it becomes even more impossible.
Yeah. So essentially also the brood survives in any case. The brood hatches, they hang around, they get fed by the one or two stray bees that come in and stuff like that, and they start building up the numbers. So it doesn't really fix the problem.
No, if anything, what you're doing is you're creating an even messier situation for the beekeeper who's got to come and clean it all up. Because, like I said, those bees become super aggressive that are left behind. And so it might not be immediately, maybe a month later, suddenly the hive is back and the bees are super aggressive. And so when we come to do that removal, we're dealing with very feisty bees, dead comb, dead bees, a smelly situation. It just, it takes so much longer to remove the bees. And at the end of the day, you're just delaying the inevitable. You're going to have to pay somebody to come and remove that comb in any case. Otherwise, another swarm will just pull in there anyway.
100%. So there's also, the factor of, let's say now, most beekeepers charge for how big the job is.
Yes,
And if it's gone and been sprayed or poisoned, or they try and smoke it out with rubber and old socks, they light old socks.
Oh, we've seen so many different things.
It just makes a big mess, and it takes longer to actually get it sorted out. So the job becomes so much bigger, more expensive eventually.
And often the damage, we had one customer recently actually who fumigated bees in their roof. And what happened is that now there's nothing to defend that colony as well. So the mess of honey and stuff dripping through their roof and onto their carpet. So now it's not just about a bee removal. Now they've got to replace the ceiling boards. They've got to sort out the carpet. So it's just becomes a much bigger, more things.
If it was that simple,
everyone would do it.
Beekeepers wouldn't be in business, would they?
No.
In terms of doing bee removal. So I think in terms of, and also look, we're not going to touch on the ethical side of things. We know there's a massive shortage of bees. We know that it's bad to go along and poison the bees. There are a lot of people that just don't give a damn.
Care.
Says, I'm just going to doom it, type thing.
My favorite is, are you going to come and fetch them, or am I going to spray them with doom?
Or are you going to make me doom them? So, and at the end of the day, I think most beekeepers need to at least cover their costs and all that type of thing. It would be unfair and unreasonable. You pay your plumber, you pay your dentist, all that type of thing. So the beekeepers also got to make a living, cover their costs.
And what a lot of people maybe don't understand, they think, okay, well, you're gonna take out the bees and you get the bees. That colony is not a viable producer for anywhere from 6 months to a year. And when we bring them back here after removal, we have to supplement feed them, which is fairly expensive. Pollen is almost as expensive as steak per kilogram.
To rehab them.
To rehabilitate that colony, because you've traumatized them. You've cut them out. You've forced them to stay in a box. You've got to supplement feed them. They've lost productivity. And so there's a lot of elements that people don't think of. It's like if you drop your dog off at the SPCA, it's not just done and dusted. Someone has to feed that animal and make sure that it's looked after. And the same thing goes for the bees. Once we remove them from somebody's home or wherever, they need to be looked after and brought back to health. And that costs money.
We had the other day, a situation where a lady went along and said, oh, but you guys can get the honey. So once you remove the bees, you guys can get the honey and just use that.
But what guarantee do we have that person hasn't sprayed poison in those cavities? Well, remember, honey absorbs, things from its environment, smell, chemicals, whatever. And so the risk is just too high if that people maybe have sprayed it and then you consuming honey that's got poison in it.
Well, what I was going to say is that we eventually offered it to her. And she said, no, thank you very much.
Yeah.
She doesn't want that honey. So she didn't want the honey.
But was happy for us to take it.
To take the honey to kind of offset the cost.
No.
You know, so
yeah,
you know,
it's just too risky. And you know, although you don't want to admit it, but people they're not always honest about what the situation is and what they've actually done to those bees.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And it's a horrible feeling. Hey, I mean,
it's horrible when you go into a roof and someone's poisoned those bees and you can see all the dead bodies and it's horrible.
But now, what about someone that comes along and looks at it from a third-party side and say, well, you're just a bee person. That's why you feel bad about those bees all lying dead there and stuff like that. I'll give an example. When we first started off, I did a removal inside a tree and I vacuumed up all the bees out and I thought I got the whole lot. And the client said, whatever happens, just make sure there's no bees left and, you know, push an insulation and spray some spray inside there and stuff. So, you know, to try and make sure that it is the end, that you don't get another swarm going back inside there. And I went and sprayed inside that cavity after I'd removed the bees. At least I thought I had. And the bees were just pouring out. And it was the worst feeling in the world. It felt like you had killed an animal of some sort.
Well, you have killed animals, not just one.
It really was such a horrible feeling. And so, you know, from that, you can imagine, I've actually had a client phone me once and said, you know, her husband went and sprayed the bees intentionally. And she says she can't sleep at night. She just wants to throw up. Seeing that whole beautiful hive die was like seeing a dead
animal. Also, and the problem is dead bees are really smelly.
Yeah.
The smell that's left behind when a hive has died is
I can't tell
disgusting.
You how many times we've had clients actually call us. They'll phone us for a quote and say, please can you come and remove the hives? And even if we do it on a budget rate or whatever it may be, like really cheap, you know, trying to help people out. And we just don't have the money at the moment. They end up making a plan.
Yeah.
And then they maybe try and make all sorts of home remedies, fumigate and stuff. Like what you said, it doesn't work in the long run.
Yeah.
And then in a month's time, they phone us to come back and say, well, okay, just come take rid of the bees. We'll make a plan to, you know, to pay for the service and stuff. And when you get there, they didn't phone us because the bees were an excessive problem.
It's because of the smell.
Than what it was before. It's because of the smell.
Yeah.
The smell was so intense. It's not like a rotting corpse.
Yes.
It was disgusting. So if that factor as well, and they had like kind of died onto the top of the ceiling board and started
seeping through.
Board.
Yeah.
The ceiling board had like, you know, that brown spot when you have a water leak.
Yeah.
Like that. It was just, it was disgusting.
I think the long and short of it is, you know, we don't want people killing bees.
Yeah.
But just understand that if you do, what are the risks?
Yeah.
And understand that you'll possibly be phoning someone to come and remove them in any case. So rather bite the bullet, do it properly, and then at least you know it's no more worries.
Yeah.
You know, if the beekeeper is doing a good job removing them, you shouldn't have the bees coming back to that same place.
What about someone that goes along and says, but I've had beekeepers remove them before?
You probably have had a beekeeper, not a professional bee remover.
Yeah.
There is a difference. I'm a beekeeper, guys. I don't like doing removals. I can do them, but I don't like it. And I believe it takes a special touch. You've got to understand exactly what you're doing and why you're doing it, and be able to put that hive back together so that it does stay and it does thrive thereafter. You know, we have a very high success rate with our removals. In spring or when there's a flow, it goes up to 95%.
Yeah.
But when we're having to supplement feed, it trickles down to 80%. But I mean, that's a very good success rate. Most people say it's 50-50.
A lot of beekeepers can't keep the swarm once they've removed it.
Yeah.
But we've obviously, having done so many, we've learned the trick of the trade and stuff. And there is a big difference at the end of the day between a beekeeper and a beekeeper that's trained to do bee removals.
Yeah.
And it's because bee removals is not quite beekeeping, it's pest control.
Yeah.
Essentially. The pest control companies don't want to touch it because they end up going to hospital. They end up not knowing.
Again, it comes to the understanding. You know, if you ask one of our bee guys to come and remove cockroaches, they don't understand the life cycle of it, what they need to thrive, what will hinder their ability to be there.
Yeah.
And the same with our bee removal guys. They understand exactly what to do to keep them away, as well as what to do to help them thrive when they've been removed.
A simple example is like, and a bee remover would know this. When you open a roof, for argument's sake, let's say you remove 1 or 2 tiles. When you start working on that hive, straight away what happens is the queen will actually take a whole bunch of little worker bees and they'll walk up the beam. And they'll go and clump up top there, and it's not a big clump, so it's not something you can easily just see.
Yeah,
little clump. They hide behind a rafter there to keep her safe. And while you're doing it, you go and you finish up and you say, "Well, fantastic,
got it."
Take it all out, spray a bit of repellent. That's another thing that a lot of beekeepers don't do. Spray repellent, be gone. and then close it up, and then everything's hunky dory.
Meanwhile, the queen has stayed behind with a small group of
100%.
reinforcements,
Yeah.
so she can
And
restart.
they just restart, and literally it's a meter further away from where the
Mm.
hive was. And if you haven't got experience in doing bee removal,
Because sorry, bees behavior is different when they're under threat, when
Yes,
the hive is
compared to in
compared
hive.
to normal.
Yeah.
And invariably, if you're a beekeeper, you're used to the behavior that you see when they're working and carrying on, and
In the
you're just
box,
doing
in
an
the hive.
inspection.
100%.
Whereas a bee remover understands that their behavior changes completely when
Yeah.
they're under threat.
Yeah. A simple
Um,
thing like the bees when they normally would go out and forage. As soon as you start opening up that hive, it's all hands on deck.
And it's like they
Yeah.
send off pheromones and things
They
to call the reinforcements back.
Yeah, so no one goes out to carry on foraging.
Because it's not work day as normal. Now they need to protect their
Don't
home.
hit the house. We've got to be all there to fix up and all that type of thing. So I think at the end of the day, I think the first thing that people need to do is make sure that if they are going to have a beehive removed, make sure it's done by a company with a bit of reference.
Yes.
So quite easy. Go onto Google Maps, look up their company name or their beekeeper's name, whatever his company.
And look at the reviews on Google.
Look at the reviews.
Yeah,
100%, and see, is this someone that we want to use? Second of all, have they had beekeeping training? Because it doesn't help having removal experience, but you've got to have beekeeping training as well.
So the thing also is there was a debate last week about beekeeper qualifications.
Yeah.
And in South Africa, there really isn't such a thing. But it's also about understanding, has that person, I mean, we know a bee removal who's never seen a queen. He's been doing removals for like 40 years or something, but he doesn't understand how the hive works. But that's fine because he's a removal specialist.
Yeah.
So it's also just, I think, do your homework, phone around a little bit, hear about that company. Because at the end of the day, that one guy who's just suddenly started doing bee removals because he wants to make a quick buck here and there, he's not going to give you a guarantee on his work.
Yeah.
And the thing is, they often, I've seen guys who are starting out. There's a hive in the wall where they remove the whole wall.
That's ridiculous.
So the damage that can be done by somebody who doesn't, and obviously then why people, when you say, can I remove a couple of bricks? They're like, no, hell no. Because when we do it, it's postbox size. Enough to get your hand in and you can do it.
Yeah.
So often the risk of damage to your property can also be quite high if you're not using somebody who knows what they're doing and has a track record that you can follow. And then obviously it's the cost. So you're going to pay, and if there's no guarantee, you're going to pay again. You might pay again.
If the guy is not prepared to give you a guarantee, he hasn't got confidence
in his own abilities. Yeah.
So there's a very likelihood that you're going to pay again. So the first thing I would say is, can you give us a guarantee that they won't come back? And we offer that to all our clients.
But we also need to say, well, those bees will not come back. No matter, I mean, if the beekeeper is taking them 2 kilometers away, that same colony is not going to come back. Okay, so they could say, yes, I'll give you a guarantee that they won't come back because they know they're taking them 2 kilometers away. But will that cavity where the bees have been removed
not have bees again?
That's what we need. And that also comes with the client agreeing to preventative measures. So spraying bee gone, filling the cavity, making sure you close it properly.
A lot of times they don't close the cavity and then they get another swarm and say, well, I've got another swarm of bees. They normally say the bees are back. Meanwhile, it's another swarm that's arrived. But the cavity hasn't been closed where you took out 2 bricks or whatever it may be. So everyone's got to play their part.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone's got to do their part.
Yeah. For the beekeepers, those that don't want to remove bees or that do want to remove bees so that they can get the swarm, contact us. We'll remove the swarm.
You can keep it.
And you can get the swarm. At least we like to do it, that we can know that the bees have been removed successfully, that they have been saved. If you aren't confident that you are qualified enough or trained enough to do bee removals, contact us. Give us the details. We'll go and do the bee removal, and we'll rehabilitate the swarm and give you the swarm. So there's an offer to the beekeepers so that we can make sure that there's good success.
Anyway, if you guys have any questions about bee removers and bee removal skills, pop it down on our comments. Perfect. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and follow us so that you don't miss out on anything.